state the factors that led to the failure of David's successors. And this is 7 marks. Number 1, most of the people who got this question wrong are those who started with he or Solomon did this and this. You were not asked about Solomon, yes? You were asked about the what? The successors. So you were supposed to start your answer with they because they were many. Also, avoid answers of one word. There are people who are giving answers of only one word, of which I did not understand what you meant. There are people who misread the question, or rather they did not understand what the question required you to do. But what I gathered is, because you're already in Form 4, is because you did not read the question and do what? And understand. You were rushing to do what? To answer. That is what I gathered. Because there are people who are telling me about failures of David. Look at your answers if you got them wrong. There are people who told me about David's failures. That means that you misread the question. You were not keen in your reading. So make sure that when you're in the examination, you read the question and understand. And when you're answering, as you're answering, you're giving out the point. Because they needed 7, you do what? You keep on reading the question as you're what? You're answering. Number 1, they shed innocent blood. There are people who are talking about the answers, and they were giving me examples. Solomon, and they say this and this, for example, Solomon, like that, which was good. So they shed innocent blood. They were oppressive in their rule. So there are people who are repeating only one point, because if they were oppressive in their rule, it's about forced labor. If you talked about forced labor, it's the same as the what? Heavy taxation, and the same as what? Bribery. That was the same one point. They married foreign wives. They built temples for the idols, or you say they built shrines for the idols. They were unfaithful, or rather you can just say they were dishonest. They did not tell God who, they did not tell people who God was. And then they were dishonest, or they were disobedient to God, sorry. They were disobedient to God. Anya, sorry, the next question. Welcome back to class. We're in 3C.
Identify the characteristics of God as portrayed in the life of King David.
Yes, and here is where I'm emphasizing that you should really understand the question before answering. You're being asked characteristics of who? God. So you're supposed to say what God is. God is powerful, right? As portrayed in the life of who? King David. So your answers should start with God is. So basically, if you did not start your question like that, your answers, that means you are wrong from the word God, because you are being asked about God's characteristics. So God is powerful, God is moral, or you can call him God is righteous or good. That is just one point. God punishes evil, or he punishes sin. God is holy. God is the defender of the defenseless. God protects. Rather, you can just say God saves his people. God protects his people. God provides for his people. God is faithful. God answers prayers. God is kind, or rather you can just say he is merciful or he is loving. Sorry, God is kind or merciful or forgiving. Lastly, God is loving or caring. So those who are giving loving and caring is 2 points. That is just 1 point. Yes? When you illustrate, you should explain. Did you explain? According to King David. But I did not mark about the explaining. But now I think we should be explaining. How many explained? It's a good thing you pointed out so they be explaining. Because most of them are writing only one word. That's a good thing that's a good, yeah. You should be explaining because it's according portrayed to, in the life of who? King David. Thank you. So in order for you to, before tomorrow, I want you to explain them. Why are we saying he's powerful? What did God do in the life of King David that shows that he has power? Mm-hmm. Sorry?
David was small.
Mm.
Was able to kill them.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And when we say he's a righteous God or he's a moral God? No, because we know we should explain in the kcse. Maybe that's why we are failing in C.R.E, right? Which is a good thing. So that because we've known now where our error is. Why is he God is righteous?
When David took Uriah's wife, you can see that God did not let it go. He punished David.
Yes, because he wanted, because the righteous God did, yeah, that's why he had himself to do or to put on a sackcloth. Yeah. So kindly you write those, you explain and you write so that tomorrow you write where we reached in C.R.E. Don't write at the back of your exercise book. Question 4, eh? Yes, the difference between prophets in the Old Testament and traditional African communities. There are people who are well read, there are people who've revised, and there are others, they were just guessing. Yes? Others, the problem in this question is I think most of you assumed that the question will be multiplied by what? By 2. So people are writing 3 answers. I don't know who told you that. They assume that you write 1 point to get 2. I don't know who said that. Because it's so, you explain one of the differences, you get only 1 point. So, the Old Testament prophets stress the worship of one God. And then there is one person who drew a what? Who drew a table. Really, in C.R.E, really, it is wrong. No one is going to mark it in kcse. This is not biology, is what you do that. I can't remember what it is, so don't think that I'm trying to shame you because, see, I marked before we went forward, after, right? So I can't even remember. I'm not here. We are here to correct each other. So the Old Testament prophets stress the worship of one God, that is monotheism, while in some traditional African communities, many gods and goddesses were recognized, or they were worshipped. So that means in the Old Testament prophets, they stress the worship of one God, whereas in the traditional African communities, many gods and goddesses, some of the traditional African, not all, but some of the traditional African communities recognized many gods and goddesses. The Old Testament prophets received their call from God. And then people kept on telling me the others received their call from who? Ancestors. That's a lie. That's how I knew you never read or you never revised your work. Because if in the Old Testament prophets received their call from God, while in the traditional African prophets inherited their work from the ancestors. They inherited their work. They did not receive any call. They inherited their work from their ancestors. So, also number 3, the Old Testament prophets spoke to the nations God sent them to. So they spoke to the nation that God sent them to, while the traditional African prophets were confined to their ethnic communities. So they only did their work in their particular what? Ethnic communities. But all the prophets, they spoke in nations that they were sent by God. They did not have to be confined in a particular ethnic community. Number 4, the Old Testament prophets faced opposition from their people. So the Old Testament prophets faced opposition from their people, where the traditional African prophets were respected leaders in their communities. Were respected leaders in their communities. The work of the Old Testament prophets were recorded and preserved, while in the African traditional was passed on through oral traditions. So the work of the Old Testament prophets were recorded and preserved, while in the traditional African prophets, their work was passed on through oral traditions.